Greetings, welcome back. So this is our second YouTube video, and today we're gonna make Korean barbecue. Okay, Bulgogi, or as my non-Korean friend would like to say, Bulgogi. But you know what? Close enough. Anyway, literal translation of Bulgogi means fire meat. Bul means fire, gogi means meat, which implies basically the meat is cooked over an open flame. Now, traditionally, Korean barbecue is made with very finely sliced, high-quality ribeye. But you know, lately, I have been rather disappointed with the quality of meat that I buy from the Korean markets. Because when you bring it home and cook it, it's just never quite as tender as what a ribeye should, and it doesn't taste quite right. So I'm becoming a little suspicious. Perhaps they're selling it as ribeye, something that's not ribeye, or if it is ribeye, perhaps it is like the lowest quality ribeye. So I've been sort of thinking about what other cuts of beef that I can substitute. Yeah. And I think I found it. Here I have a beautiful cut of chuck roast. As you guessed it, I got it from Costco. It's USDA choice, relatively inexpensive. And now I know what you're thinking. Chuck roast, man, that's like a tough cut of meat. But partly you're correct, but I'm going to show you it all depends on how you prepare it. And in order to use chuck roast, first of all, you have to cut it really, really thin. And secondly, you have to cut it against the grain. And for those of you who don't know what grain means, when you hold a piece of meat like this, usually you can easily tell which way the muscle fibers are running. Typically, it runs long way. You know, you're going to be able to find one particular direction is the long way. So against the grain means you cut perpendicular to the long way, the direction that the muscle fibers are running. And when you look at it like this, it's like this one looks like the muscle fibers are running this way, you know, so you cut it this way. That's called cutting against the grain. The other thing is when you're looking for a piece of beef, make sure it's high quality, USDA choice, and also look for the ones that have the most marbling. Now, those of you who eat steak on a regular basis most likely know what I'm talking about by marbling. But in case you don't know, marbling means the amount of fat that's contained in beef. And when I say fat, I don't mean the chunks of fat that's around the beef, around the red portion of the meat. That is sort of worthless. You know, you just end up paying for it, and it really doesn't add anything to the texture or the flavor of the meat. Marbling means, you see all those little fine white lines? That is layers of fat that is coursing through the red portion or red fiber of the meat. That is flavor. Not only does that add flavor, but it also makes the meat more tender. Now, how do you cut this really thin? When it's soft like this, it's very difficult to cut it really thin. It's hard to work with. So the trick that I learned is you put this beef in the freezer for 2-3 hours so it becomes firm, sort of like a half frozen, but not solid rock. Okay? So you want it to be frozen enough so you can actually cut, you know, stays firm when you're cutting really thin, but not rock hard that you cannot actually slice through it. And so when I come back in my next segment, I'll show you how to cut it really thin. Okay, I'm back. So this chuck roast has been in the freezer for about 3 hours. So it has become pretty firm. So pretty easy to work with, but not rock hard. Okay? So idea is now to slice this as thin as possible against the grain. Oh, by the way, if you're going to do any cooking, invest in really one high quality knife. And more important than that is make sure you sharpen your knife before each use. Because the dangerous knife is the dull knife, not sharp knife. The sharp knife will go where it was intended to go. is the dull knife that's going to misfire or slip and perhaps slice your finger. Anyway, so once we have this, this is pretty firm now. So let's start slicing again into grain. Alright, so we're going to slice this as thin as possible. So right here like this. Don't worry about it if it's uneven, because we're not trying to create any work of art here. At the time we're done, it's going to be all nicely thinned out, and we're going to marinate this. Now when you're slicing this, if you run into any large piece of either fat or gristle or tendon or ligament, then just sort of cut it out and throw it away. But as far as small pieces, don't worry about it, because you're going to be slicing it so thin, when you're eating it, your mouth won't even notice it. So I'm going to continue to slice this really thin. Now if you're lucky enough to have any butcher friend, by all means, ask him to do you a favor and cut this really thin like this. But if you don't have a butcher friend, unfortunately, you'll have to do a little bit of manual labor. Okay? So you see how thin it's going to be, and when I slice it really thin, I'll show you how thin it is. Okay? Like it's like this thin. Okay? And don't worry about the pieces of fat, because that's all flavor. Remember, as Andrew Zimmern says, fat is flavor. Or as I like to say, when it comes to taste, fat is your friend, not your enemy. So continue to slice. Now you notice that how there's a big chunk of fat like this. So then I would just basically cut it out and probably not use it, because that's too much of a chunk of fat. It's one thing to have layers of fat, but it's another thing to have a huge solid chunk of fat in there. So just like that, just continue to slice it. Now remember, thinner the slices, the better it is. Really thin. And if while you're working on it, the meat sort of defrosts and becomes harder to work with, then by all means, just put it back in the freezer and try it later. So anyway, so once this is all sliced, then it's time to marinate. So when I come back, I'll show you how to marinate the beef, and it's really simple. Okay, so in this bowl, I have a very thinly sliced chuck roast. Nicely marbled, good mixture of fat and meat. So Korean marinade is very simple. Okay? It's basically about 4 or 5 ingredients. Toasted sesame oil. As you guessed, this thing is ubiquitous in Korean cooking. It goes into almost everything. High quality dark soy sauce. Now make sure you choose like Kikkoman brand, because don't settle for any cheap brand, because it makes a big difference. Pinch of salt, sea salt, brown sugar, green onion, 1 clove of garlic. I'm going to crush these, and optional, a slice of ginger. Now, some people don't like ginger, so then you can skip it. But I like ginger, so I'm going to add a piece of crushed ginger. So when it's time to mix this, basically there's no particular order to mixing, and I'll show you how easy that is. Alright, so let's start marinating this. First, I'm going to put some sesame oil. I don't know exactly how much, so I would say 2-3 tablespoonfuls. Again, exact science is not required. Soy sauce, just enough to wet this, maybe 3 or 4. Okay. Pinch of salt, kosher salt, of course, or sea salt. So that's there. Black pepper, generous amount. Okay. And you're gonna slice green onions. Generous amount. I would say 3 or 4. Okay. I find that more green onions you have, better it tastes. So if you don't like green onions, I think you're out of luck. Okay. Put it in there. Remember, 1 clove of garlic. I'm going to crush this with my trusted cleaver. Okay, like that. And then 1 slice of crushed ginger. And a little bit of brown sugar, perhaps 1 tablespoonful or 2, doesn't matter. Okay, so now you just basically mix this. The simplest thing to do is use your hand. Make sure your hands are clean. Okay, so okay. Now if it looks like you're not coating it evenly, then by all means put some more soy sauce. Okay, not too much, because otherwise it would be too salty. Okay, so like that, just use your hand. It's like making kimchi. Generously. It's just like this. At this point, if you're not really too worried about your health issues of eating raw beef, you can actually taste it a little bit, small piece of it, which is what I do, but some people may find that kind of disgusting, or may be squirmish about it. So anyway, so this thing is ready. It's ready to be cooked, actually. But if you want more intense flavor, you can actually marinate this in the refrigerator for 2 to 3 hours, then you get actually more intense flavor. So when I come back, I show you how to cook this, because that next part is actually the most important part. Okay, now we're ready to cook this meat. Now, perhaps if you want the true Korean barbecue taste, this is probably the most important step. Because in order to get true Korean barbecue flavor, you have to cook it over open flame. And what that does is, it caramelizes the combination of sugar, soy sauce, and toasted sesame oil on the surface. And that's what brings out that typical bulgogi flavor. So without that, you're not going to get a true essence of what Korean barbecue is. But obviously it's a lot of work firing up the grill every single time you want to eat this. So I have an alternative method that comes pretty close to duplicating that flavor. And it's using one of these guys. So if you like to eat beef, or for that matter, any meat, invest in one of these guys. This is cast iron skillet. Larger the better. And what this does is you can get this smoking hot. And when you layer a meat, maybe a small thin layer of meat, it starts caramelizing from the bottom, and you can caramelize the top using the broiler. So I have the broiler going, and make sure you bring the oven rack all the way to the top. Okay? And that way you're caramelizing the bottom from the smoking hot cast iron skillet, and you're caramelizing the top from the broiler. So let me put this iron skillet in the broiler and for about 5 minutes and get it really, really smoking hot. And I take it out when I come back. I take it out and show you, how to layer the meat. Okay, so my cast iron skillet has been in the oven under the broiler for about 5 minutes. So now it's just smoking hot. And you can see it's smoking hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly layer thin layer to make sure. Remember, don't use too much, otherwise the juice from the meat will come out and it's going to essentially boil in its own juice rather than actually caramelize. So one thin layer like this. You see how it's like sizzling and cooking? And when you do that, now it goes right back to the broiler for maybe a minute or two. So while this is cooking, let me sort of discuss how you're going to eat this once the meat is ready. There are several ways. You can just eat it straight out. It's absolutely delicious. Or, as many Koreans do, you can eat it as a side dish with your rice and other Korean side dishes. Or what I suggest you do is sort of, use your imagination. Use that meat, perhaps when you're making your own burrito. Instead of taco meat, why not use Korean barbecue? Make some Korean burrito out of it. Or if you like Philly cheesesteak sandwich, keep everything the same except replace the meat with Korean barbecue. Now that may taste really good. Or if you like to make your own personal pizza, use Italian seasoning, Italian sauce, but replace your pepperoni or sausage with Korean meat. You're gonna get a Korean pizza out of it. These days the big buzz is fusion cuisine, which means many of these famous chefs are trying to create new flavor by mixing flavors of different countries. But that's for professionals. For us, just mix the finished product and see what it tastes like. So, essentially, the limitation is your imagination. But when I come back, I'm going to try to show you how Koreans would eat barbecue beef, or any meat for that matter, using lettuce wrap, some. Okay? Anyway, I think this meat is ready. Let me take it out. Whoa. Okay, here it is. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay? It's been caramelized at the top, caramelized at the bottom. So it's definitely, it did not boil in its own juice. And like this. Now, by the way, this iron skillet is really hot, so make sure when you do this, you don't burn yourself accidentally. Okay. So here is a beautiful plate of Korean barbecue or bulgogi, and let me take a piece and try it. That's really good. So anyway, so let me come back and I'll show you how Koreans would eat this, okay? Okay, so let me show you how we Koreans like to eat our beef. It's called sam, which means wrapping the meat in a piece of lettuce. Okay, so a few basic ingredients is all you need. Of course, lettuce. This is green leaf. Very finely sliced julienne green onion, and very, very thinly sliced raw garlic. Okay? Now, if you find raw garlic too strong, you don't have to eat it. And of course, your plate of sizzling bulgogi. There's one last ingredient you need, which is gochujang. This is Korean red pepper paste. Now, this is a very, very basic ingredient in Korean cooking, so you're not going to have any problem finding this in a Korean market. However, to ask for it, you may say you want red pepper paste. Now, they probably understand what you're looking for, but in case they're confused, you do have to say gochujang, or whether you say gochujang or gochujang, I'm sure it's close enough that they'll understand. Now, you cannot use this straight out of the box like this. So what you have to do is you have to season it, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So what you do is get a decent sized bowl and take a heaping spoonful like this. It's very thick, consistency of, I would say, tomato paste, maybe even thicker, not quite molasses, but close enough. So what you want to do is get this much, and now you have to thin this down and season this. And the way you season this is, you guessed it, toasted sesame oil. So put generous amount of it, and don't worry about it. As you start mixing it, the oil is gonna start getting incorporated. Okay, it may take a little bit of work. If it looks like it's not being incorporated, don't worry, it will eventually get incorporated. So I'm gonna basically get this really well into it, and I can already see this thing thinning it down and the sesame oil getting incorporated. Okay. You could probably see this working. And once it's incorporated, you add some more sesame oil and continue to incorporate that until it becomes relatively thin. So again, it does take a little bit of a work. So once it's well incorporated, okay, I'm going to put some more sesame oil and continue to work on it. Sometimes spoon works better, sometimes fork works better. So, try which method works better for you. And it's actually working pretty well now. So once this is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin it down even further with vinegar. So now we got this vinegar, pepper paste, and sesame oil combination. So once you add vinegar, then we call this 초고추장. 초 means vinegar. So now this stuff, once it's thinned down, is really good for dipping sauce for any of your vegetables. So cucumber, zucchini, peppers, what have you, celery sticks. So instead of using store-bought brand, like one of those sour cream dips or blue cheese or ranch dressing, try this, and you may actually like this a lot more and probably healthier for you. Anyway, so this is almost ready. So as you can see, that thick molasses, almost honey consistency has now become much more manageable sauce. Now at this point, if you want to add some more sesame oil, you could, depending on your taste. You can taste this like this. Now by the way, if you want to use this sauce to dip your sashimi or raw fish, instead of using wasabi and soy sauce combination like they do in Japanese restaurant, then add some chopped garlic and chopped green onions, and that actually gives a much more intense flavor for if you're dipping your fish. And a lot of Koreans actually use this sauce to dip their fish rather than soy sauce. Next thing is you're going to add some sugar to it. So generous amount, and I'm going to incorporate that a little more. So now if you let this sit in your refrigerator, sometimes it gets a little dehydrated. Then you can always, at the time you're serving, thin it down with some more vinegar. So anyway, so this is ready. So now this is our 초고추장 or vinegar gochujang sauce. So how do I serve this? So this is how you do it. Taking a piece of your green leaf lettuce. You can use red leaf, but please, no iceberg. Okay? You do not want to insult this beautiful piece of meat by wrapping it in iceberg lettuce. And besides, I don't think any self-respecting Koreans would ever wrap their bulgogi in a piece of iceberg. So once you have a piece of red leaf or green leaf, generous amount, and then you just spread it like this. Okay? You can put a lot, and couple pieces of green onion like this. And again, I like garlic, so I'm going to put a small piece of garlic and mouthful piece of bulgogi meat like this, and you wrap it up, and it goes into your mouth. Okay? So let me try it. Now, if it's too big, then of course, just bite half a bite. Just make it into a small size so you can put the whole thing into your mouth. Okay. That's money, my man. Yep. Let me chew this and I finish my talking. Anyway, that's how we do it. So try this recipe, it's absolutely delicious. And so next time, I haven't quite decided what I'm gonna make. I have some ideas. Maybe I'll make Korean pork belly, braised pork belly, which is my own recipe even though it's sort of Korean. Or I may just show you how to make delicious homemade bread. So stay tuned. Until next time.